Yo, what's up, drum and bass heads? Welcome back to another episode of How to Drum and Bass. This is the channel where it's my mission, amongst other things, to teach you the sounds that the top producers are using all the time. And this, what we're gonna do today, is definitely one of them. We've definitely done some sounds like this on the channel, but this is just another rendition of a way to use big saw wave leads. This one in particular is very full, it's very rich, it's very short and stabby, but it's not too sharp, and it's just something that we hear a lot. Andromedik uses a lot of this sound, and so do some other producers. So yeah, this is the sound that we're gonna be making. And what we're going to recreate today sounds like this. I want to preface this by saying that there's definitely some rough edges around this sound. That's not because you shouldn't refine it any further. That's more because this will fit into the mix with a lot of other noisy elements. So it'll sound a lot smoother once you put it sort of in a song. But this is what we're going for today. So we basically got a really nice, powerful, stabby saw wave type thing here. It almost sounds like a brass instrument, like a tuba playing some higher notes or something like that, or maybe even like a dark trumpet or something like that. And so yeah, let's have a look at how we can make this sound from scratch. Like always, if you want to download the free preset or also the Ableton rack of all the post-processing that we're going to talk about, of course, in this video, you just don't want to do all of that yourself, you can download the whole Ableton rack, the MIDI notes as well, and the preset for free in the link below. So go and do that to save yourself some time. And if you want to learn more about how to produce professional drum and bass, make sure to check out our website, howtodrumandbass.com, where you will find everything you'll ever need to produce better and more professional drum and bass. All right, guys, that was the video. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. For now, let's dive into how to do this. So let's grab another Serum patch, copy these notes down really quickly, and let's get started. So the basis for any sound that sounds basically like this is always saw waves. And usually it is saw waves that are detuned slightly from each other at the very least. And these sounds are also very wide. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with two oscillators. You can put the fine of one down and the fine of one up. It doesn't actually really matter what, as long as it's not too much. We want it to sound a little bit off key so that we can create wideness between these two oscillators, which we're gonna do by panning one of them slightly to the right and one of them slightly to the left. And we're gonna create little disparities here between these two oscillators because they'll be playing the same octave and the same wave, but we want them to sound slightly different in the right and the left ear to create a stereo image, because width and stereo image is a large part of these big leads. So yeah, we can do that in several ways. We can do that with this fine. We can also do that by putting different amounts of unison on both of these. We want a high unison count for both of them. One of them have like a slightly more detuned sound than the other. And yeah, let's also actually put them both down one octave so the sound gets a little bit darker. And let's add a tiny little noise layer. The reason for that is that we're working with these sort of digital saw waves, which are a little bit too perfect, so as to speak. And by adding just a little bit of noise, we can add some warmth to it, as well as that noise is also going to go through all of the effects here. Just going to add a little bit of fuzz, and it's going to sound nice. All right, then the first thing we want to do is we want to grab an LFO and we want to put it on these levels here, because we do want this to sort of be a little bit stabby, right? So let's put this all the way up there, and let's make the LFO in a shape like this. And of course, put it on trigger mode. So yeah, that we get something like this. And this shape will help you determine the length and the sort of body of the sound. So for now, I think we're gonna go with something like this. Hey, what's up, guys? Just want to take 1 minute of your time to ask you if you are looking to start learning about drum bass production, or maybe you've already started and you just feel like you need a lot more of the fundamentals and you want to understand it really much more thoroughly and start to finish. We have just done a soft launch for our newest product. It's a membership called the School of Drum and Bass, and it has more than 200 videos that go from all the way in the beginning on how to produce music and how to use Ableton and all those kinds of things, all the way to producing a professional drum and bass track, mixing, and pretty much everything that needs to be covered for a beginner and an intermediate producer. If you feel like that might be interesting for you, there's a super special offer right now. You can get your first week for just £1 British. That is like $1.50 if you live in the US, or like €1.15. So if you're ready to level up your drum drum bass production, go check it out in the link below. All right, let's move on with the video. Now, what we're gonna do as well, immediately in post-processing, I'm gonna add a reverb, since that is definitely just a very big part of this sound. Let's already add it in. I'm not gonna add it in Serum because the Serum reverb in this case doesn't really sound all too good. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab a convolution reverb. This one is the standard Ableton one, which you can download for free, I'm pretty sure, if you have Ableton Live, but there's many other free plugins. And all we're looking for really is a reverb that is something like a big space. So I obviously already had a look, and I actually like these chambers in large rooms because they have a lot of sort of reverberance to them. I specifically like this BM7 old chamber. Just makes it sound very, very grand. However, we do want to turn that dry wet down a little bit to something like 25%, and we also don't need all of this decay and all of this size here, so let's turn those down respectively as well. Cool. What we also want to do in this EQ here immediately, this is the EQ of the reverb, so how much of that reverb comes through. We really only want that middle part, so we're going to EQ out sort of those highs and lows. Cool. Then as well, this is sounding very, very plucky right now. That's because we have a low attack. I want to up this attack just ever so slightly. I'm just going to do it like this in this envelope because that's the way I like to do it with attack. You could also, of course, you know, just slightly change this this LFO here, but I'm going to do it here. Maybe like 30 milliseconds. Just so that it doesn't have that like super noisy transient kind of, also, you know, created by this noise here. And then for some extra body to it, I'm gonna add a sub as well at -1, but I'm gonna be using a square wave. It's just gonna add a little bit more sort of clarity to it, I feel. And what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna FM these saw waves slightly. It's not gonna make the hugest difference in the world, but it's just gonna make it sound a little bit more maybe dirty, maybe distorted. I'm not really sure what the word is for it, but you'll hear it in a second. So we're just gonna turn these up. Of course, we're gonna pick FM from the sub. Yeah, something like that, just to add a little bit of frequency modulation to it. Once again, the reason sort of being for that these saw waves become a little bit less perfect. All right, cool. Then let's start adding some hyper. Let's make this a tiny bit wider. So we don't need this much mix. We're gonna push this down a bit. Cool. This might become a little bit phasey later, so you can always adjust it downwards, but for now, let's keep it there. And then also what I want to do is I want to add an EQ here, and I want to get like kind of a sweeping type thing happening as we sort of move through the sound, just to create a little bit of extra movement because now it's a bit stale. So I'm going to make a shape like this, and I'm going to just drag this a little bit this way, so that sort of together with this attack, we have a tiny sweep of the frequency of one of these bell curves that we're going to create here. So we're going to up the gain on this a little bit, and we're going to put the Q down so that we have a little bubble here. And we want that to start sort of here and go through. Well, we want to blend that to taste, basically. Let's see how we go there. This gain might even be too much. I just want to have a tiny accentuation. You got to be careful with this gain here in this EQ, because if you had an EQ, for example, in Ableton, you would have the highest gain on 12, whereas this small bit is already 6. So you could go all the way up to 24. This is very intense. So yeah, 6 is about enough. And maybe it doesn't have to go that far. But we'll figure that out in a minute. All right, let's also add some delay. So I think we can get away with mostly standard settings, except we want to drag this filter down because we don't really need all of the sound to be delayed. And we can definitely drag this mix down a little bit, just to make it, you know, sound a little bit more roomy and stuff like that. All right, let's also add a compressor here because we want to really beef up this sound, right? So what we want to do is we want to make sure that some of the stuff here in the bottom, you know, the lower frequency content that's not so loud is going to be a little bit louder. So let's see, by putting up this threshold and upping this gain a little bit, and we'll have to put the attack down completely. So So maybe something like that. The reason you put the attack down is otherwise the compression kicks in later, and we don't really want that. We want it to kick in immediately. You could hear that because it was kind of like choppy just before. Let's also add some tube distortion. It's not going to do all that much. It's just going to add some extra harmonic content. We're going to do a little bit more distortion later in post-production, but let's see how this goes. Let's see something about that. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to grab a comb filter. We're not going to put that at the end though. We're going to put that somewhere probably either before or after this EQ. I would say probably after, so that it just goes into the delay and then the reverb later. And yeah, like I said, we're going to grab a combs filter. Now the thing about the combs filter is if you put the cutoff higher, it doesn't necessarily do so much combing. It actually, if you look here, it doesn't do that much combing at the higher cutoff, except on these sort of higher frequencies, so it damps that a bit in a way, but it does give this really nice drive to whatever is below that, and it's actually a better drive, a better sort of saturation for some reason, I'm not 100% sure why, than just, for example, tossing it into the compressor more or upping it with the EQ. And you'll hear that immediately as well. If we put up this resonance just a bit, if we put up the drive of this a bit as well, and we got to turn down the master here a little bit now because things are going to get kind of loud and we don't want it to clip here. And later we can dial back the mix of this if we want as well. It depends on kind of what we want. I think for now full mix sounds good. And then let's take this this comb filter off again, of course. Cool. And then so I want to do a couple of things. I want to put a limiter right after this serum patch, mostly because I want to basically do some upwards compression. So the way that a limiter works is it'll just turn down the volume of the stuff that is the highest, so the loudest frequencies in your signal, but you can also give it gain for the entire signal. So that means that basically everything that's at the bottom, so that's less loud, is going to go up, which means it's going to become a fuller sound. You can hear that that's just a lot fatter and a lot nicer. Let's also drag this down to, like, let's say, I don't know, -3 or something. Let's also grab an EQ because I feel like we're missing a little bit on this frequency spectrum here that could make it even richer. Usually sort of around the 1K area works really, really nicely for stuff that is supposed to, you know, be a big lead, because that's sort of where the vocal range is most prevalent as well. So yeah, you can kind of blend this to where you want it to be. Do you want it to be slightly richer and higher harmonics or slightly mid, more harmonics? Let's see. I'm going to keep it there for now, I think. And then what we also could do is we could add an overdrive. Overdrive is also substitutable by any type of sort of multi-band saturation on the lower end. And we're just going to see what this does. We can also hear, by the way, that this this delay might be a tiny bit intense. So maybe we put that feedback down. And also change this to be a bit faster. So we could put it at, for example, a 16, so it really becomes more of a tail than like a proper delay. All right, cool, something like that. Let's turn this to the side a little bit so that we really get this part, and let's make it quite wide. You can hear now that this limiter is doing a bit too much of a job, so let's reset this back to like 0 dB. And then also, we could add an OTT on here as well to sort of do some more interesting compression for richness. So let's do that as well. Let's add that before this saturator. And let's actually just turn this delay down a bit more even. Let's move this a little bit to this way as well so that we don't get too much of that high reverberating stuff. And let's put that mix maybe at like 10% and this at like 25. And then lastly, let's just turn this down a little bit because it's very loud right now, so that it becomes just a tiny bit softer. And let's also take some of these harsh highs out. Let's also adjust this envelope slightly more. Let's see what we can do sort of with this attack maybe going a little bit more upwards, and then this decay and this sustain to be, you know, sort of like there. I'm hearing quite some distortion though, so maybe we turn the gain on this compressor down. And we can also turn this FM up a little bit more if we want the sound to be a little bit more sort of higher and softer. And there we have it. That is how to make a big sawtooth stabby type lead, just like Andromedik uses in lots of his songs. Guys, that was the video. I really hope that you enjoyed it and that you learned something. If you did, please consider leaving a comment for me. That would be amazing because it helps me push out this content to more people like you who want to learn about drum bass. And if you want to learn more about how to produce professional drum and bass, make sure to check out our website, howtodrumandbass.com, where you will find everything you'll ever need to produce better and more professional drum and bass. All right, guys, that was the video. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.